How do you pronounce your name? It's
Qlin.
Qlin and the last name?
Achat.
Qlin Achat.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But Empress Q is easier.
What's that?
Empress Q.
Empress Q.
Yeah.
All right.
Or
So
Q.
Empress Q or Q. Welcome to, I think this is episode 11 of Let's Talk About It Now.
Thank you.
So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody?
Sure. So I'm Empress Q, founder of the cannabis movement, Stay Calm, It's a Plant. And I'm just basically the head organizer of the movement. Everyone who supports it, who purchases a t-shirt, who comes to our event is part of Stay Calm, It's a Plant, the movement. And that's really the power of it. It's a grassroots movement. And I think anyone who believes that cannabis is just a plant and should be considered as such, is part of the mentality of our brand, quote unquote.
So you not looking at just decriminalization, you're looking at full legalization of it.
Definitely. And the main reason being that we know that in this capitalist society, they will commercialize it anyway. It's not something that we can see easily just being allowed to be free. As much as we want to advocate that, I think that the trend that has been set now by America is too far gone, and obviously it's an industry that everyone is wanting to get into. So with full legalization, that would open up the opportunities, the business opportunities that the community would want, But let me just say right here with that definitely what I'm advocating for is an equitable and just legal system. And it needs to be said, and this is my strong advocacy in this particular podcast, because as we draw closer to some sort of reveal, there's this great reveal the government has for us, because we've heard no details of what the law change would be.
Right, but we know they're discussing it a lot right now.
Yes.
Yeah, we know
Right?
they have a lot of discussions going on, more or less behind closed doors.
Yes. Right? So, after this big reveal, we know that most likely in their minds, it should be something that big business should get into and be the pioneers, so to say. But we know that not to be true, that Rastafari really is a community of people that has been using the herb all this time and, who have indigenous and traditional knowledge that could definitely be then made into a product or something to enter a market,
What sort of a role does this play in Rastafarian culture? Because the thing is, in school, a lot of people actually don't know much of the details about Rastafaris if they don't know them personally. Because in school, you learn about Muslims, Catholics, Hindus, the three big ones. So what sort of a role does it play? Is it something that you use in worship, in meditation, or just generally in everyday life?
Well, Rastafari in itself is a liberty and not a religion. It's a way of life that anyone can adopt. The spiritual aspect behind it does point to Ethiopia, and the guide to that is His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I, who we see as a Christ in our time. Having come to fulfill many things that is biblically written, and him being from the lineage of King Solomon and Queen Sheba of Ethiopia. So there is much greatness there, and Rastafari became established as a way of life when Garveyites was told or prophesied by Marcus Garvey that look to the east for the coming of a black king or a black Christ, and then there was the coronation of Haile Selassie I. So then, that became like a way of life. And that way of life is encapsulated in nature, in loving creation. It is grounded on biblical knowledge. So I am an Ethiopian Orthodox as my spirituality. I see Rastafari doctrine as a way of life in terms of using biblical scripture to inform the way that we should dress and carry ourselves.
So you guys still use the Bible as the book of worship?
Yes.
But any particular version?
Well, that's an interesting question, right? Because definitely Rasta born out the St. James,
the New King James.
New King James version.
That's why I asked.
Right? Yeah, for sure. I mean, but it's what we're limited to here in the West, and that unfortunately is like the most common form of the Bible you can get. But there is an Orthodox Bible um, that is shared by many of the Orthodox churches because there is Oriental and Coptic. So, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. And what I would say is that many of them do use the King James Version. Um, but there is an Orthodox version, and in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and in Ethiopia, there are the oldest forms of the Bible, like the original forms, still preserved by monks in monasteries in Ethiopia. So it's what one seeks. What we say is that there is still truth. When you go to Orthodox Church in the beginning, like baptismal classes, we talk about there is the fundamental truth of the Bible in terms of goodness and what one should want to do as a righteous person. And those things I think are not really arguable. It's either you do good things or you don't. And even though we fall short of the glory in various degrees, I think that it's all about the intention.
Yeah.
So with Rastafari, though, let me just reiterate the ital is vital. Part of
Mhm.
our liberty is fundamental as well, and this is where cannabis, the herb, comes in, because it says in Genesis 1:36 that all seed bearing herb fruit, all seed bearing plants will be unto thee as food, as meat, right? And this is the voice of the Almighty saying this to His creation, right? Um, so that's how we look at the herb, as bearing seed and being as food unto man. It is not the only herb. So one of the things I, as well as a herbalist, a novice herbalist, but someone following this liberty, um, also want to push as a consciousness is that it is other herbs as well. It's about us being aware and advocating for a whole complete change in our liberty to something that is plant based, and cannabis will lead that because, to us is like the queen of herbs, the queen of
Mhm.
plants. Um, yeah, and so there is that, and the spiritual reference of cannabis in our liberty and culture and way of life is that as food is not just physical food but mental food as well. So we call it brain food. I'm
Mhm.
sure you've heard that reference,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely.
So, when do we use brain food? I mean, you can use it part of your daily life, but then there is also parts of your day where you will put aside for spiritual practice, um, where it be a prayer or within communion of other brethren and sistren, and so that is when Rastafari uses the herb as spiritual, but it is not regimented and ritualized as Western religion to say it's at a specific day and time. There
Yeah,
are,
like you have a moment of worship and everybody gather and pass around the smoke pipe. It's not that
well, it's that.
structured. Oh, you have that
Yeah,
as
we
well?
have that as well. I mean, on special days like His Majesty's Earth Strong, July 23rd, and Coronation Day, November
Oh,
2nd.
my birthday is July 26th, so just
Yeah,
off the mark by a little bit.
well, it's a royal month. That's the tribe of Judah. So royal people. Um, but on those days, we hold, in different mansions of Rastafari, Naya Binky and Bobo Shanti hold um, Isis, that's where they gather to their altar and they hold worship. Um, and then 12 Tribes of Israel, which is another mansion of
Mhm.
Rastafari, also has their celebrations of the birth of the king and, a festivities closer to, say, a more Ethiopian celebration, not as spiritual worship per se, but as a celebration.
So, how many mansions of Rastafari we have in Trinidad?
Well, recognized under the umbrella of all mansions, there is 12 Tribes of Israel, Bobo Shanti, um, Nyabingi, and the African Unity Brotherhood. I hope I'm saying that right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what are the differences between them?
Well, different rituals, how they practice or celebrate certain festivities, definitely. For example, the Shanti being of a priestly order um, and being closely aligned. or to me advised by the Ethiopian Orthodox spiritual practice. They hold Sabbath, they have specific days to be sabbatical, and they gather and they worship and hold fast, you know. Whereas Nyabingi holds Isis more on days of celebration, specifically of the king. I don't really know if they gather weekly, Whereas 12 Tribes of Israel is more of a Rastafari organization and not an altar or a place of worship. They hold spiritual practice like Bible readings and gatherings, but it's a little different, not as ritualized, I should say, as Bobo Shanti.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I would say, I invite once and once anyone interested, yourself as well, to see and participate. As they say, you don't have to be dread to be Rasta,
Mm-hmm.
is a way of life, is really, something you have to come into and recognize a truth that is Ethiopia and is fundamentally history of biblical scripture brought forward to our time. So there is always, when Roman Catholic, well, I too, we reasoned about this before
Right.
our background. I came from Roman Catholic, went to Roman Catholic schools, you know so I've always felt that it has been a abridged version, you know what I mean, of a story. Things are just given to you, you have a belief system. What Rastafari taught I and I is question, ask questions, find out for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Don't take third hand knowledge, you know what I mean? Seek and you'll find. So, while I was seeking, I saw the king, and the king said Ethiopia and Ethiopia Orthodoxy and this ancient church that is apostolic in nature, meaning given unto us by the Apostle Philip, as written in Acts chapter 8, verse 36.
Mm-hmm.
So once and once could go and read that and see at that moment, that is when Ethiopia was converted to Christianity, even though it was Judaic since the days of King Solomon and Empress Sheba or Makeda, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know about that lineage, King Solomon and Queen Sheba.
Well, I'm not too familiar with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't pay that much attention in Sunday school and stuff growing up. I used to give a lot more trouble than that.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting history to read,
Like I getting a lot more interested in the history now, so I find like I'm going back and reading up a lot more on the things that I didn't know, and I know it's common knowledge to a lot of people. Like you talk about it, they definitely know about it, and these are things that I'm sure you learned when you were very young. And the thing is, the information was there when I was younger, but I
Yeah,
just never paid attention to it. And it's only now that I get older, see the significance of it.
right.
So
Well, it
it's cool
wasn't
to hear
until I
about it.
was young. I mean, as
Mm.
I was young, it was still very much like Sunday school, and you go in for the snacks and to see your
Yeah.
friends. I mean, that's how it was for me, going to church every night, to see everybody. And but yeah, seeking spiritual knowledge has been a more of adult in my more adult phase. Um, so, it's a journey, and that's what Rastafari is as well. And even, coming back again to cannabis, um, we know it's a journey. Let me just say here where it has been the strength of many elders, the shoulders of giants, as I would say, that we stand on to reach to this point where the government has initiated discussions. Consultations have happened, groups are gathering. Two rallies took place, national rallies, got unification of Rastafari, under All Mansions of Rastafari, and the medical industry coming around. All of these things
Mhm.
were built on traditional and indigenous knowledge. You know, this is things that our great grandparents, your great great grandparents knew. Whether it was off the Fatal Razak or coming here by force, we have knowledge of this plant as old as that. In
Mhm.
our indigenous context of Trinidad and Tobago, and that's one of the things we have to consider. Like, um, they will continue to push this commercialization and CBD and
And THC
and
and yeah.
THC, and we have to regulate, but it's a plant, and it's a plant no different from shadow benny or bay leaf, or, so when again we come back to the commercialization model and a license, I think it should be based on your intention of growing, what you want to grow. If you want to be a small scale farmer, there's a license for that and a cost for that license, if you want to plant 10 acres, 15 acres, a hectare, different licenses. Um, so that, I'm just putting it out, word, sound, and power. This is what I would hope. The government has not invited all mansions of Rastafari to reason on their position paper that was presented to the Attorney General, that was requested by the Attorney General. So, we sent in forms that we have no idea where, what was taken out from it, what was addressed, what will be given. And I find all of this big reveal to be disrespectful, to be,
Yeah,
um,
because you fighting for this for so long and they're not even letting you know what you're going to get in the end. So
exactly.
you tell them what you want and they're not even discussing it. They basically just going to reveal that, hey, this is what you're getting.
Right.
Just kind of take it and shut up. And I'll
Exactly.
tell you what I am very concerned about is that even from a commercialization perspective, right? You're going to be opening up a new market. You're going to be opening up a new market locally that a lot of people could get into because you're going to have very low operating costs, which is something unique in
Right.
startup businesses in our lifetime right now,
Right.
in this decade where everybody's so highly competitive, right? Anybody with a couple square feet of land could plant a plant and start to work from there. And if you are too restrictive with the licenses and stuff, if you do it in such a way that the licenses are prohibitively expensive, then you kind of squeeze the small people out of it. So you could have communities that already, I mean, let's be honest, you're gonna have almost everybody in Trinidad is smoke weed, right? If you go, yeah,
Reality.
if you go to the bad areas, um,
What is
the
bad?
the more high crime areas,
Okay.
right, or areas where unemployment is higher, because higher unemployment also results in higher crime and stuff like that,
Poverty.
right? And higher poverty is higher crime. If you look at those areas, um, I'm sure you'll find a much higher percentage of people there smoke weed,
Right.
right? And a lot of their local economy, well, I don't know, I have no studies to show this, but I'm
Right.
also guessing that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of their local economy would be based off selling of drugs, of which weed will be included because I think weed is probably the most popular drug in Trinidad,
Yeah.
right? I don't hear a lot of people sniffing coke or shooting heroin or anything like that. And if done properly in a way that these people could go from selling weed illegally in their small community to now setting up a little shop, selling it legally,
Yeah.
and you're creating employment, legal employment, you're creating legal income for these
Yeah.
people in these poorer communities. I mean, they already have the distribution channels. If
For
they're
sure.
selling weed, they already
For
have the
sure.
knowledge. If they have 10 years experience selling weed,
Yeah.
and
And
you're
the
making
thing
it
about it,
legal, give them that power
of
to
course.
come out and do it.
Yeah. I mean, and it sounds, it is to me as simple as you said, in terms of other things that we license now. How I would see it is that there would be education you would have to achieve,
Hmm.
acquire, I should say, knowledge about the industry you're getting into. You should have certain things in place and then you should have a license. So, it's not that you and your neighbor and your next neighbor. And at the same time, once you make it equitable and just, then you get rid of the black market, which is a reality as well. And that is what the government, I hope, as well, is also acknowledging. You don't want to puppy show yourself and the people by saying decriminalization, legalization, but then you don't, or you say legalization, you make it so cost prohibitive that you squeeze out the small man and he continues doing what he's been doing all the time because
Hmm.
we operating at a black market level right now. You know what I mean? Where there is an economy and there is money being made, it's just not circulating in the general economy or being taxed by the government. Um, so when you consider legal markets around the world like California and Colorado, California especially, they're having a lot of problems with their legal model because the traditional small growers do not have access to a legal market. I believe it's something like 10,000 US for a license. So the people who do go in business, a lot of them are sponsored by
Like bigger drug
Yeah,
companies and
right,
stuff.
companies and stuff, and they grow and they make a brand, and then they're paying back their loan, or they have a partner in their business. And that's what I've reasoned with a sister out there about it and how that works. And she said that a lot of her friends have had to go back to underground black market, or go back to traditional jobs, whereas before, as illegal hash makers or cannabis growers, they had a formidable income.
Hmm.
But when you make it legal too, and you have government dispensaries, and if the government allow large growing operations, what happens is, or what could happen is that it could drop the market cost so low that it becomes almost like a useless commodity, you know. Um, so all of these things, I hope that they're considering. Again, these are things that around a round table versus a public consultation would have been really nice to reason with, our governmental leaders. Um, but I hope that I'm really pleased to be here, and thank you.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that we were able to do this, because I do think this is the voice of the people, doing what they must to get their word out. And I hope that this would, in terms of impact, create awareness and create, I kind of use this word and it's a kind of dread word, but it needs to happen in this timing, but indignation, towards wrongs and injustice and inequality, in Trinidad and Tobago, in a country that has a budget of how much billions of dollars, which is coming up just now, we're going to hear, um, and yet 1.8 million people, collectively, minus the 1%,
Mm.
are suffering, and it's a just, it doesn't have to be like that.
This is something I always wonder. Like how much of a democracy is our country right now? Because our governments are normally voted in on like a 30% vote. I
Hmm.
think it was 30% of the between 30 and 35% of the voting population voted in
Wow.
PNM last election. The election before UNC was around the same thing.
Wow.
So when you say the people getting what they want, what they vote for, well, 70% of Trinidad not, because
Right.
70% didn't vote for them, right? And then on top of that's just for representation, first of all, right?
Yeah.
Now we have our issues. When I talk about decriminalization and legalization, is almost like a unanimously resounding yes from everybody you talk about,
Right.
because this, first of all, the criminalization of it has shown to have failed with the U.S. war on drugs. Like that just gave rise to these massive cartels,
Yeah.
you know, and a lot more crime as the cartels now have to battle the police forces to get this product sold. So they have a lot of violence that just intertwined in their normal operations.
Right.
Right? So we definitely know that having it criminalized does not make sense. And then in Trinidad alone, how many people locked up for yeah for for this, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you look at a lot of people
Well, right now I have a brethren who is
mm,
spending 6 months in maximum security
in
for
maximum
ganja.
security,
Yeah. And the reason being why he got maximum is because he had other weed cases.
was other
Um,
weed cases or other different cases like
no, weed
assault or
cases.
so
All
all just
weed.
weed cases.
All weed.
Hmm.
Um, and is this one hit me really hard because one, we're at a point where we're talking about laws being changed,
Hmm.
and yet the government has not done a moratorium on arrests, right? So they're saying, yeah, it's going to be legal, but until then, let's see how much of you we can catch.
Oh jeez,
You know?
yeah, kind of like the ticketing before they raise the speed limit to 100.
Exactly.
Every single day, the police out there catching you doing 80,
Right?
81. You get that ticket.
Incredulous, right? Like, I don't know. Trinidad is not a real place.
Mhm.
But
But we have real people, and that's the sad part.
yeah, right? And real people living with real situations.
Exactly.
So yeah, my brethren is in jail for 6 months in maximum security, and yeah, in a time where we're talking about laws being changed. And my big thing is, so say September, first. decriminalization. All right, good. So you could possess a little amount of weed, right? The reality of decriminalization in that context is that unless you grow in your weed, if you buying it, somebody's a criminal, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if they catch you a pusher or you're a herbalist, he going to get locked up, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then, but you can grow. Most of the times with decriminalization, they say you can have 5 plants. Let's hope,
Mm-hmm.
right? Legalization. We know the models, licenses, like I explained before, and all of that. You still have decriminalization where you could possess small amounts, grow your 2 3 plants or 5 at home. But then my question is, what then happens to the people who have been locked up for ganja all these years? The government just rail backward, right?
Yeah.
Because all of this, like you're locking up people every day, but it will have a time when you'll have to account for that because now it will be legal. You would literally have to say, well, yes, the law transgressed you. You know what I mean? Even though it was however long ago, you know what I mean? And have that taken off your record or pardoned because it doesn't make it's a catch 22 or like a nonsensical thing if
Now,
you're,
my problem with that, right? Even if they're going to expunge these criminals, right? So
they're not criminals
yeah, well, sorry, that is definitely a slippery tongue. Even if they're going to expunge these people that have been held for whatever,
for ganja.
yeah, being held for ganja, right? Now, you're going to have to put them through the legal process of getting their record expunged. I'm sure they're going to have a legal process to even get them freed. Now, my last podcast, I talked to a guy that was a lawyer, and he was saying right now the DPP is severely understaffed. Maybe like they have about 30% of the staff they're supposed to have.
Yeah.
So I had to say, it had to be a real bad mind thing. If a couple months before you're going to decriminalize it, you're locking up as much people as you could, knowing that for them to get out after decriminalized, they're going to have to wait months or maybe years just for the process to go through for them to get back out. And that
No words.
I hope that is not what they're aiming to do. Lock these fellas up because even if we decriminalize it
They'll still
next
need a
month,
lawyer.
yeah, they'll need a lawyer, and they're still not going to come out for the next 2 3 years after decriminalized. I just hope that's not what they're doing because that is a real bad mind thing.
Well, we dealing with bad mind people.
That's that's what I see.
Because we can have a black prime minister who can say black youths are monsters.
Jeez.
Right? So it's a bad mind thing. And again, thank you for allowing us to be the voice of the people.
Yeah, because I find everybody I talk to, they have such reasonable opinions, but I don't see those reasonable opinions, um,
Represented.
yeah, represented.
Yeah.
And then, so look at how much people have to fight just to get this one issue pushed across, right?
Yeah.
And why do we have to fight so much if everybody already wants it? What is the pushback? So you have to come up with all these arguments that make sense and show your sources and show your line of reasoning and stuff about why it should be legal. But up to now, I have not heard a single reasonable argument of why it should be illegal. So
Well, I
who
have a
opinions are
question.
represented? That's
I
what I want to know.
I don't know, but I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Why is cigarette legal? Do you know a benefit of cigarette?
Shit, no, none. None at all.
So that's what I struggle with, this upside down world that we live
Mm-hmm.
in. Where, through your physical eyes, but as well as spiritual, it is all damnation unless
Mm-hmm.
good people stand up and say, no, this doesn't make sense or this is wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And just to protect our asses, we mean that in a legal manner, so you can't hold us like what's in you for sedition. All right?
right,
Yeah. Everything in a legal manner. Legal means we're not condoning a coup or overthrow anything. All right?
right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Empress Q meant it in that way.
Yes,
She told me that beforehand. So you're all worried.
right. Good to know.
Yeah.
So even in podcasts, we have to talk about this off air and now, you have
Yeah.
to maintain your
Mm.
your total innocence. Yes, I did not mean it in any seditious way.
Mhm.
Um, now I forget what we was talking about.
Right. Our views as people not being properly represented by
Yeah,
the politicians. Everybody calling for this, and you can't get a proper argument why it should even be legal in the first place.
yeah. And then we start talking about cigarettes.
Right,
Yeah,
cigarettes,
and
yeah.
that's what I was saying that yeah, we live in a place, Trinidad just being one place. But if it was how it used to be when I was growing up, and not everything was perfect, but morals and values were part of your daily life, manners, respecting your elders, taking care of children, respecting authority, your teachers, teachers respecting their students, their jobs, doctors wanting to help people, the
Mm-hmm.
government wanting to, implement new things to progress the country. If we return to that, Trinidad really is a small piece of paradise, and I
It
truly
is.
believe that. That's why it's tattooed on my left foot.
Mhm.
Because I love my country. I really, there is something special about being a Trini, that when I was growing up, I always felt. And now it's, our politics and the corruption and the crime has stained that so much. And I think now we live in a society where we're just kind of topsy turvy, YOLOing it out.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Hoping that a better day will come, because you don't feel represented, you feel powerless, as an average person. And I'm out there, I travel everywhere and I meet Trinis, people just like me and you, and everybody is trying. The people I meet, they're trying and they're doing their best,
And they're
and
working hard.
and they're
That's
working
why I
hard.
get vexed anytime I hear somebody say Trini is lazy.
Yeah,
Because I do, they probably around the wrong kind of people.
yeah. And it have the lazy ones. And regarding that, just as we reasoning, I mean, our watchwords are discipline,
Mhm.
tolerance, production. We have the tolerance down because we tolerate anything,
Apparently.
right? Anything we tolerate. The discipline and production we have to work on, But if we could get those things down, and it's whatever, you can have discipline and having fun. You can have discipline at work. You can have discipline in your home and to yourself. Well, you have to start with yourself, right? Um, and as Rastafari, like that's really important to be disciplined in yourself, the way you carry yourself, your word sound, you know. And people must cultivate that within themselves. And right now we are at a crisis with that and all in Trinidad. I mean, you look like a very respectable
Mhm.
young man, you
It's good
know.
to know. Thank
Yes.
you.
But when you're out there, the youths these days is shorter than short pants, dragging her slippers, you know, um, and anyhow. And, as much as they may think that's a fashion, it really is a kind of reflection of how they feel.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so all of that must be cultivated. And as a young elder, I'm 36, I think that I'm in a point in my life too where I I I'm indebted to the elders that came before me to be a representation of that discipline and that tolerance and that production, and to put that, help mentor that in our upcoming generation, like my 7-year-old son Jacob, and my godson Kobe and the other youths around me. Um, so it's on us, just like yourself. I mean, I think that if um you have children,
No, no children.
not yet. Um, but the youths will see this. I know my son's seeing this now, and other ones. And these are the things that we need to inspire the upcoming generation. Like, get out there. You have a voice, you want to do something, do it, cultivate it in yourself. Because we're real blessed. I'm sure as I was telling, I was at a Caribbean,
Yeah, in which
sorry.
way? Because I know we real blessed in plenty ways. Yeah.
Yes. So,
Mhm.
like, one particular way this past Sunday, I was at a Caribbean Sister Summit and I was asked to do a talk. And one of the things I said very blatantly is that I'm thankful we don't live in a country where I could be on a stage and next minute military could be just grabbing me and taking me away.
Yeah,
You
like
know?
Hong Kong. Because right now they have those protests for democracy in Hong Kong. You have
Right,
North Korea as well. So,
right.
mhm.
And Brazil have up, they have an upheaval right now too.
Right.
Venezuela right next door.
Yeah,
You
some
know,
tumultuous times we in.
Yeah, for sure, and thankfully, I mean, it could get there because some days you wonder if we're just getting worse. But that's a big blessing for me that we have freedom of speech. Nazma Mullah just put a post up on Facebook this morning, about our rights under the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago and what that outlines, and everyone should read that. Even though this podcast will be 3 weeks from now, so you'll have to look 3 weeks back
Yeah.
from this date. What's today? August the 30th?
Yeah, today's
Right.
August the
Okay.
30th. This
Well,
might come out like
September.
yeah, around mid September.
All right. Well, look, if nobody sees it, Nazma Mullah underneath August 30th should have the Bill of Rights. And you should just read it because, Bill of freedom of speech and being able to practice your religion freely. So we're blessed in that way. We live in a place where all our religions exist peacefully. There is no spiritual war. I mean, you
But
know,
I think beyond the Constitution, we are blessed that as a people we are tolerant.
yeah,
Um,
religiously.
yeah, not just in terms of the Constitution, but in terms of the people. Like us as a people, regardless of what our Constitution says, we respect each other. I mean, I grew up Roman Catholic. My wife is a Hindu.
Right.
My best friend in secondary school was Muslim. Well, his father was Muslim, his mother was Hindu.
Okay.
Right? So he grew up more Muslim. And yeah, you're right. We don't really have racial tensions in Trinidad, even though we have all these different religions coexisting. I mean, sure, half the people is locked their door when they see Jehovah Witness walking down the road. We know that, but we don't offer them any ill will. They just
Right.
don't want to take the time or the
Yeah.
hot sun, right? But I have no hatred there. We all want the best for everybody, and I love that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we real blessed in that way.
Yeah. And then we have doubles.
Oh gosh, don't even get me started on doubles.
And that's, shout out to all the double lovers. That's
Yeah.
a common, isn't that amazing? Like, which Trini do love a doubles?
Well, Gary Griffith. That
Gary
was
Griffith don't like doubles?
it was
He's not a Trini.
I don't know. I can't say he's not a Trini, but that's the one thing. That's the one thing I do agree with Gary Griffith. I mean, he's human. He wouldn't be perfect, you know.
I
Not
hear
everybody could
you.
be perfect, so obviously you'd have people out there that do like doubles, but that's their imperfections,
Yes. Well,
and we accept that. Yeah, it was an article with BC Perez. I think it was. He writes a column called "Thank God It's Friday,"
right.
and he's an atheist. So
He is.
yeah,
Okay. I read his column, but I didn't know that.
he is married to my cousin.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's just as fun in real life. I love his articles. But yeah, so
You
Gary
were saying
Griffith.
Gary Griffith
Yeah,
don't like
Gary
doubles?
Griffith said he don't eat doubles. He don't understand how people like doubles.
He like to polarize himself. That's his problem.
Yeah,
It's better you say you do, or it's not for me, but it's a staple.
yeah,
Doubles is like a national food.
yeah. Doubles
Trini
is
star
just
doubles,
cross. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I don't. I mean, obviously it have Indian origins, but when you hear doubles, I think if Indians go to India,
yeah.
and they see it, they're like doubles in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. The closest thing they might get is what, like naan or something?
I don't even. Yeah, probably a non
Because
cripsy.
yeah,
Yeah,
because I never see any Indian equivalent from India to Bara
yeah.
and like
True.
Bara and China together. Like,
Have
cause
you been?
no, I never went to India,
Okay.
but I never heard of any
Right. And I
equivalent to
same.
Bara.
I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube street food
Hmm.
videos and stuff, and yeah, it's the same. But they
And
like
it,
a lot of fried food though. India's the fried
yeah,
food capital of the world.
yeah. Geez, I mean, India,
Everything,
you'll have some real unhealthy foods. I'm sorry to tell you.
everything deep fried in oil. I was
Yeah,
watching.
that's like for Diwali, right? Because my wife is Hindu, like, and I have a sweet tooth, right? So I'll be eating sweets. But even I know when something too unhealthy, right?
Right.
So I'll be like, all right, so what's this? Oh, that's gulab jamun. That's fried flour with some sugar and you fry it in oil. So flour, sugar, and oil. Okay,
Yeah.
and what's that? Kurma. Same thing but crispier. All right, and what's that? Barfi. Oh, well, that's milk and sugar. It's like more sugar.
Yeah.
And then there's
The
is
orange one. I always
yeah,
forget the name.
jalebi. Is jalebi the one
Yes.
where it's literally just like fried sugar in
Yeah.
oil? Like when she told me that, I was like, I don't,
Right. And I don't know. Yeah, boy. Well,
No, it tastes good though, but oh gosh.
well,
Yeah,
that's the thing you have to admit. You're like, shucks, I know it's not good for me, but oh gosh, it just tastes good.
moderation for everything.
It's true.
Like I sure while we're on the topic, I mean I sure doubles kill more people than weed.
Obesity,
Yeah, yeah.
cholesterol, definitely. I mean, yeah. I mean, we could draw. Yeah, we should draw that comparison, right? That's a funny one. Um, oh boy,
It's
the
like
choke on the para. no,
No,
no, I'm
no, no.
kidding. I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cholesterol, but I just,
Mhm.
yeah, you're right. I mean, people, I don't know, like when we bring up things, it's like, I don't, in this day and age, I think everyone knows someone who uses herb now, right? So when the
Someone,
taboos,
maybe at least two or three people, because I think it a lot more popular now than it was before.
yeah, and the older people, I mean, I get a lot of calls asking about cannabis medicine, if I have oils, how do you use CBD, if they could use edibles, a lot of calls, and some of the people I help reason or advise are older people in their mid,
Mhm.
um, 50s and such. So yeah, I mean it's much more common now, but at the same time, the taboos and the stereotypes still exist, and a lot of that is because it's linked with criminality. So there's always that kind of overarching, question of it must be bad. Too much of it is, But as you rightly said, too much doubles have people eating three doubles a day, every day,
Yeah, that's just not good.
365
Yeah.
days, and that will shorten their life much faster than cannabis,
Yeah, and if you're looking at how effective cracking down on cannabis has been, the first time I came across weed, I was 14 years old on a retreat with a church group in
Wow.
Blanchisseuse, right?
True.
And I
Okay.
was like, I didn't smoke at that time, right? But some guys, it was like, they asked me if I want to do it. They say, it's like, where y'all get? They say they went out the road by the corner and they just asked, and a man went and bring them a 5 piece. So, I mean,
Wow.
if 14-year-old children, in a place they've never been to before, could get weed, right, from around the corner, like how effective is fighting it,
Yeah.
right? So you're locking people up that shouldn't really be locked up. You're spending a bunch of money fighting it, and it clearly being wasted if 14-year-old kids could literally go by any corner and get it still.
Right.
So I tell you, I'm still waiting to hear a logical explanation or logical argument of why it's illegal in the first place, and I'm just
Yeah.
not hearing
Thanks. It doesn't have
it.
one. But let me, as you say that, and especially bringing up that example of children, clearly there's a need for education,
Mm,
and that's the other part of this whole legislature change that is very confusing in terms of they haven't said anything. One, we have no idea what the law is going to be or what they're planning. But two, there has been no soft launch, no, any
mm.
kind of inkling
Yeah,
to
we
say
just
that,
want to talk and hear a kind of
yeah, or
consensus.
be educated, because remember there will be people who, whether you say decriminalize, legalize, freeing up the law is going to obviously allow more people to try it. Um and as much as we say it's not toxic, it's non-addictive, as a plant and
Mm.
its properties, we don't want the youth and them to use it before their brains are developed. You know
Right,
what I
that's something I
mean?
was going to ask you about as
Right.
well. We have
Yeah.
to look at the negative, possible negative effects of
Yeah.
it.
So, 18 years old, just like drinking alcohol in Trinidad, according to
Mm.
our law, some doctors would say later on, like 20 to 25, that your brain is still
Mm.
developing. But to me, 18, we're already kind of loose on certain things, and we don't want the youth and them to still go past us and do it. But we have to educate. And that is where right now we're lacking, in this whole structure of legislation. Um, and, in that gap, definitely stay calm will come in. So as we're talking, I'm already formulating in my mind another flyer that probably needs to be done. And if I could distribute maybe 1,000 before, like by September 1st, just on educating people on what's the healthiest ways to use cannabis, which is steaming or vaping,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't burn the herb when you steam. You're basically just heating it up and allowing it to release its essential oils.
What about edibles?
Edibles is also a healthy way to
Yeah, because
consume
that one you just
cannabis.
extract the oils
Yeah,
and
and
then you
then
use the oil
right.
for the Mhm.
Um, but one of the things that I'm reasoning about a lot with people who ask me questions is concentration. And a lot of people, unfortunately, their first experience with edibles has been bad, because they weren't educated on how to use it, and because
They overdose. Well,
they
took too much,
exactly,
too high of a dose.
exactly. So the portion of the brownie was too much. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's hard to tell people, even though you could say eat half, and that's like right now the normal starting. If you buy from somebody who sells edibles, just say try half. wait 20 minutes and see how you feel, you know. Um, but most people did not have a good experience. And again, because of concentration. So steaming is the healthiest way. You can eat it. You can drink it in tea.
You can sprinkle it like oregano on your food.
Exactly.
That
Yeah, of
that's work,
course.
okay.
You could even, like, one of the things I've seen among the Rastafari community is they cook down the leaves like bhaji. Yeah.
Mm.
So you could take like big leaves from the plant and cook it, you know, and eat it. I've also seen people
Roti and
juice
wheat
it.
bhaji.
And that what we're talking about. Perfect lunch hour snack, right?
Or after work. Let's
After,
save it for after work.
hey,
Mm.
if you need it to get through the day. Because that's the thing too. I mean, um, as we reason about this, I mean,
Mm.
I don't know about you. Have I used herb on the job? Let's just talk about that, right? Because actually, Alwari asked me that question at a public consultation. Should people be allowed to use cannabis at work? And my silly answer in the initial just quick response was, well, they do it anyways,
Mhm.
right? And that was tongue in cheek. But the reality of it is that I know people, including myself, who have used cannabis on a lunch break and have been relaxed and steady
Yeah.
headed to go back
And
to
my
work.
thing would be it would depend on the job.
Right,
Right?
of course.
So you don't want people working on a construction site smoking weed. Although they do it, in my experience, they do it. Um, but no, you don't want people doing anything dangerous while they are intoxicated because let's be
Yeah,
honest, it's a type of intoxication.
euphoria.
Right, or euphoria, but you have some that have different physical and mental effects.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if you operate in heavy machinery in a dangerous scenario, you need to have all your faculties present. Right,
definitely.
so dangerous jobs, no, like offshore construction, driving a vehicle, no. I know they have blood tests now that could test.
Driving a vehicle. Mm,
Yeah, no, but the thing is,
debatable.
they have blood tests now that could test. I think it's like the active and passive enzymes or whatever, so they could tell.
Yeah.
Because you know the weed
That's
will
like
stay
the
in your
drug
system.
Eliza.
Yeah, because the weed will stay in your system for some weeks,
Yeah.
right? But they have tests to, I guess, test whether it's still active in your system or not.
Right, because
Because
they had some issues with that in Canada. Well,
right,
a brethren actually, Alonzo Stewart, brought that up at a public consultation and he broke it down for the public regarding the drug Eliza rollout in Canada. And it cost Canada something like 80 million Canadian
for the whole of Canada.
to do 100 police officers.
Hmm.
So they trained 100 police officers, I guess, you know, a little bit in each district or whatever, or maybe to go out and train others, you know. Um, but then he talked about the drug Eliza having the issue that you said it was just corrected, right? That they
Wait,
were,
hold on. 80 million to train 100 officers.
yeah,
So that's 800,000 Canadian per officer.
probably. Is that how you broke it down? I don't know. Yeah, it
Yeah,
sounds.
yeah, 800.
Well, not only that,
Mm-hmm.
the facilities needed. It's
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
because what he was saying was that the facilities are forensic.
Mm-hmm.
So the test is a swab test, and you need to pass it through DNA.
Okay.
Sorry, screening or testing now, and that machinery is expensive. So, and then the other part of it. So, besides the government probably setting up those in each district in order to test, then they had the officers, and then they have the actual machinery, the drug Eliza that you have to go and issue, on spot. The other thing that he was saying is that what some people were doing was doing after they got arrested, got a drug Eliza, they also requested a private forensic sampling so that they would have their evidence as well to present. And what a lot of people were finding was what the non-active they were saying like THC levels was 20%
Mm-hmm.
at the moment of arrest, but in the morning or the next day it was still 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore that creates a disparity of, how long have they had this in their system? Were they really
Intoxicated or not.
intoxicated at that point? So if these new drug analyzers can do that, fine. I think all those things need to be reasoned. And here where I would like for us as a society to reach in terms of progression. Um, I would like for us as people, just like you and I are reasoning, and we reasoned earlier about, politics and religion, and talking about that these are things that you should talk about in order to better understand one another. And I don't think the government is there to police us. You know what I mean? I don't think our leadership is placed there to tell us what's best for us. What they should be doing is creating our best scenario for us to live in, right? So they having the knowledge and having the education should say, we are forecasting in 5 years, this is where the world's economy is going to be. And this is where we want to position ourselves and our people in that, this is where people in the world stand on cannabis. Trinidad needs to position itself within that. So the more that we look at things, the more we have leaders who have this visionary outlook, and not just is Trinidad, UNCPNM, Indian African,
And just following in the in the wake of whatever other countries doing.
right? Yeah, right. And continuing perpetuating the same governance that has been from since independence, um, which is neo-colonial and based on what one person in Britain say, right? We need to allow our people to have a voice, and our people need to be educated and knowledgeable enough to know the power of that voice and how to use it. Um, but that's where I want for our people. So when we talk about this cannabis issue and should you smoke and drive, should you
And smoke and work and
smoke
stuff.
and work,
Like you should be allowed to for some jobs. I might actually say mandatory if you're working in customer services because they look like they need it.
Yeah, I hit on a vape pen in the morning,
Yeah.
definitely,
You deal with some customer call you and cussing you up. You take a pull like, good afternoon, sir. How may I help you today?
Exactly. Yeah. Because you think like it's just like for me it's like caffeine, which, I'm a coffee person as well. I was going to use a stronger word, but let's just say a coffee lover. But yeah. So we're talking about something that is all, and we maybe this will, we could talk about this for our next episode 2 of this podcast. But the history of cannabis in the Caribbean and in the world and in the West has been all economic and all racially based, regarding why it was illegal. And when people discover that truth, then they should question what is the big deal? What exactly are we talking about? And hopefully through their own research and their experience, because life is the greatest teacher. You could do, everybody in this time and want a scientific, explanation. But in traditional and indigenous medicine, your intuition is your strongest um, teacher, and there are things that we know intuitively that is good for us.
But when you really break it down, intuition is basically science based. It's just you because experiments are done by getting empirical evidence by running the same test over and over and over.
Right.
To get the results based on different inputs, you get different outputs, and you find the relationship. Then you have I forget the type of analysis where you change multiple variables to get multiple
Physics mode.
outputs. Yeah, right. So in one experiment, you could figure out multiple links. Right, but intuition now, if you think about it, you're going through life and everything you do, you're paying attention to what you do and the outcome. So
Right.
without even knowing it subconsciously, you're constantly experimenting. So when you
Yeah.
think intuitively, you know this good or you know this bad or you know how to approach this subject or this plant or whatever, and you think you just somehow know it, it could be that, your subconscious has been running these scientific experiments over and over and over, and that's
Definitely.
where intuition came from. So
Yeah.
it should never be discounted.
Yeah.
Intuition is very important.
Definitely. And as you say that, I thought about empirical evidence and our issue with it now. And the issue with it now is that people use it to sway majority over standing. So, I learned that in a philosophical class about rational thinking and learning all these arguments like red herring, how people put forth things to you now, So the way they say it and the exaggerations of things lends to the way that you understand it, but that's not the reality. So in news, when they do these polls and they say, what do you think tonight?
It's like leading the witness.
Right? So they say, text us your answer. And then when they say, tune in, when they come back, okay, well, 80% of you said, yes, we don't think the prime minister is doing a good job, right? And 20% say, no, he is. But 80% of how much, you know?
Mm.
50 people called in. That kind of
Yeah,
represent
yeah.
1.8 million of us, right? So, I mean, that's the issue now. Like, that's how I feel about the world. I think that when we look at these media outlets, um,
And I think another one we love is the ad hominem attacks, where you attack the person and not the issue.
right.
So I mean, I might not always agree with, I guess, what the prime minister says, but sometimes he might say something that makes a lot of sense,
Yeah,
and you have to be willing to say, well, recognize the sense that he's talking.
for sure. Yeah. So, all of it leads to progressive thinking, how we observe things and reason and communicate. And, like I just came, I was blessed to go on this trip to New York, and I'm still processing it. And my greatest takeaway was the way people communicate and the way that they affirm themselves and one another, And in Brooklyn, you get a lot of that positive affirmations about yourself and,
Mhm.
Your children and how people, and these are strangers, people just be like, oh, he's such a nice boy, he looks so cute, or, I like the way you dress, and it's upliftment. And it's, when I think of Trinidad, I mean, as I tell you, I travel everywhere, so I'm always on the ground, and a lot of the conversations are so heavy, they're so dead in a way. It's a lot of cursing and,
Mhm.
derogatory language, and very, to me, monosyllabic, about how we express ourselves, the thing or the,
Mhm.
yeah, or, and, we don't know how to communicate. And I think that, again, to me, it always comes back to leadership, right? Leaders in the home, leaders in the society, leaders in governance. And I don't pinpoint our who is governing now because, well, yes, not, I mean, I don't mean the ruling party. Opposition representatives, they matter. You know what I mean? And when they set a trend that this is how you should be and
Mhm.
carry about yourself, then the people say, okay, these are the people that lead us, you know? So right now in our current state of things, I again not saying red or yellow. It's just the reality of our governance, not setting good examples. And with the upcoming election around the corner, because all of this, as we again the cannabis issue, it's all related in our minds as people on the road, on the street, the average Trini. Um, we know political plays, and I
Mhm.
think that this is a political play as well, in terms of swaying favor.
Yeah, because we always knew that they were going to announce something coming close to the election,
Right.
and it looked like it would be something to, I guess, decriminalize it a bit, but not all the way. Because I don't think they want to give us that leeway, but they definitely want to get some votes.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's the way they're going to go with it. They're going to give us some, but not all.
Yeah. So, and then what do we do about that? You know what I mean? How do we push back? How do we have a voice? Um, and how do you have a voice when you don't have a middle ground, you don't have a space for communication, because you don't hear that in parliament, we don't hear constructive debate. It's either you're for and they're pushing back against, and that's it.
Yes,
So
never. Let's come together and see what's the best solution. It's like, oh, we both have good points. Let's
yeah,
talk about it. Oh, hey, let's talk about it.
yeah, right, let's talk about it, TNT.
That wasn't intentional, but I'll leave it in.
I love it, yeah, because that's what we need to do, and maybe we will reason we should branch this out.
Yeah, well, I willing to. That's why I didn't want to have any set format for this show. I willing to have any and everybody on. I'm not going to have, and I definitely wanted. You see, like this, where I get to hear the voice of the people, because a big motivating factor was this. Is like I always go and buy some bar,
Right.
on a weekend or something till I'm, and I real partial to these smaller old bars, corner
Mm.
bars and thing. See some
The
old men,
hawk and spit.
yeah, the hawk and spit bars. Where you have the residents, old drunkards in the corner talking shit, and I'll just rock back and sip
Right.
on my way
Full of
and listen to
vibes.
them talk, and I get real kicks, right?
Yeah.
But when you talk to, and I obviously meet new people, talk to a lot of people, and the more I talk to people, is the more I realize that all this division I hear about everywhere on, it could be social media, could be news, could be media, could be politics. When I talk to people, I don't hear any of that at all. It's like everybody,
Feeling the same
yeah, everybody
thing.
feeling the same. Like we all hurting a bit, we all struggling, we all love each other, we all want what's best for Trinidad. This crime hurting all of us, So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
there's definitely uh, a missing platform for our voice to come out that
yeah.
we need
What
to
do
do
you
something about.
what do you think about young people in politics? Like,
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
yeah.
I think
Are you interested?
I don't want to get into politics. I
Yeah,
already told myself I rather stay on the outside, voicing my opinion, but I don't want to get into it because I don't see myself as a good role model. I want the freedom to make a lot of mistakes so I could tell people, hey,
yeah,
this is how I know there's the right and the wrong thing. I know if I
right.
go into politics, you make one mistake, they're gonna
Yeah.
crucify you for it.
I love that you said that because, I mean, that should be the measure.
Mm.
Is it? I mean, we have plenty crooks and liars.
Yeah, but the
Correct.
one thing is I don't want to be a hypocrite.
Yeah,
That's the thing. And I know if I go into politics, um, everybody in politics pretends to be perfect.
yeah.
You know?
Well, there's lie. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
that's
It's
it.
not
That's
that
it.
they
And
just
I
pretend,
don't
it's
like
just
to lie. Yeah, I
lie,
don't like to lie.
you know?
I like people to know my imperfections. Like no these imperfections there because they're part of me.
Right. Well, I think we need more of those too, and the whole world is changing. I mean, in this, when you look ahead and you say, how do we get past these tumultuous times? What do we
Mm.
foresee as a prosperous future? Dream big. And I dream that the youth and them will become the next set of leaders. We don't know what that transition will look like, but at least, I mean, I know some progressive people who I think would be great in government, like Jerry Anthony from New Fire. I hope you
Mm.
don't mind me saying that, but I think we share, he understands the need for that, to have that power in order to make the change you want. But I just calling on people like that, my brother Mohammed from
But look, we have
Freetown.
this guy Nikolai Edwards,
Yeah, that's the
and
San Fernando guy.
yeah, I had him on one of the
True.
podcasts
Okay, I have
already.
to look at
Yeah,
it.
but I like his
My
ideas.
sister was telling me about him.
He's
Um,
he's very energetic, and I get the feeling that he's just very passionate about Trinidad and Tobago,
right.
and his heart is definitely in the right place. And um, I would say, okay, so a lot of people would say because he's young, he mightn't have the experience. He has some years' experience in, but I always counteract that with, I mean, half the ministers we have no experience. They had Jack Warner as Minister of National Security,
Right. And
after having a chapter in a book about his corruption in FIFA, right?
right.
So,
Yeah,
you shuffle ministers around to ministries that they have absolutely no idea about
exactly.
the subject matter. So, a lack
Give
of
him,
experience is not a problem.
yeah,
He could surround himself by people with more experience, and I think he's intelligent enough to give them guidance. Like he has a fixed political ideology, which is something none of our politicians have.
right.
They can't say whether they're conservative or liberal. They can say whether they nepotistic or corrupt, and that's
Right.
about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I applaud that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And I hope that he gets other passionate young people to come forward with him. And then the other part of that is to do the work despite whatever, despite the change, until the change happens. So we need more community-based organizations, politically inclined. And in the future of how I see things as well is that becomes a mandate for leadership, that you should have some community organization under your belt that, I started this or I'm part of this, you know. It have a lot of simple things, we just reasoning, obviously, but again, in the power of the word, what we would want, as I say, dream big. It have so many simple things like um equity with all the governmental perks. My
Mm.
thing is they get paid enough. They don't need no no drivers provision, no gas. card. You know what I
Yeah, and
mean?
why they can't buy like a little foreign used Toyota Axio or
You know what I
something?
mean? So that,
Gotta
yeah,
buy
exactly.
Prado.
A 7-seater and pick up all of them. We only going exactly. We
Yeah.
drop it. You know, we
Yeah,
need to drop
all the
St. Clair.
ministers from Arima to Port of Spain. Just
Exactly.
meet me by the bus route for between seven and half seven.
No, well, we could
We go
pick them up
organize.
home. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, they had to walk to the bus route. We are so dread.
Yeah.
But it would be nice if they did. And on the way, you could meet people and talk to them.
Mhm.
You know,
That's why I say they they're not solving a lot of our problems because they don't understand our problems because
yeah,
they isolate themselves completely from it. I
yeah.
was working in Port of Spain, I think this was 2015, and I think was this? I think this was right after PNM1
Yeah.
or something happened, and I know there was like a lot of traffic in Port of Spain, and they did traffic management to basically reroute a bunch of these streets just so the Prime Minister could get
Uh,
to Parliament on time.
right.
And it's like, yeah, forget everybody else in traffic, make traffic for everybody else, but you spending too long in traffic.
Yeah.
Let me basically say, forget everybody else, I need to get where I'm going on time.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of
And that's
approach I don't like.
classism, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the colonial mindset that persists.
Mm-hmm.
And that is our next talk again, because how do we dismantle um, the perks of higher class? You know what I mean? And that's a mental change. You know what I mean? People have to want equal rights and justice for everyone. So, I heard a story recently and I knew it, but it really touched me that the person also spoke about it on a political platform, talking about Ubuntu, and Ubuntu, Ubuntu
That's the, I know the operating system.
it have an operating system named
Yeah,
Ubuntu.
yeah, one, two.
That's cool. Well, it's an African word and it means I am because we are, right?
Okay, well, yeah, I think it's like a crowd, um, not
Collective.
crowd-funded program, but yeah, it's like a group of people that made this
No,
program.
well, oh, okay, that's what Ubuntu, the
Yeah,
program is. Well,
basically,
it's
it's no one person made it. I think it's like programmers made it, and
okay.
it's open source, so people could continue adding from to it from all over
Mhm.
the world, and it's accessible to everybody.
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
well,
I have to
I
look it up.
see, I see where the word came from now. So that's actually a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I mean, how it was kind of discovered to the West, because obviously it had been part of this tradition of these people, was that an anthropologist came and put a basket of sweets by a tree and told the children, a group of children, whoever reached the basket first, and we do that in the
Hmm.
West. Last one to leave is
Yeah,
you
it's
know
a
what I
rotten
mean?
egg. Yeah.
Exactly. Or first one to reach will get. And she said, so who reached there first will get the basket of sweets.
Mm.
And when she told them to go, to her surprise, they all held hands and ran to the basket,
Hmm.
you know? And when they reached, they shared up the sweets because everybody had
Wow.
reached, right? So yeah, I mean, in that concept within Trinidad and Tobago, if we had that mindset, I am because we are, especially with our politicians, that should be the civil servant mandate. I
Hmm.
am because we are. So if they perceive that, even if it's 30% of the population that voted for you, you should serve that 30%. You have a duty. You know what I mean? To make sure that their voting wasn't wasted. And, sadly, I mean, I don't know how these people sleep at night. I see very little progression. I see some development. Yes, we have some things built, but if you can't fix basic things like roads
Hmm.
and hospitals, the education system, we have to start with the basics, right? And again, to me, that comes again to communication. Because communication within the community, being able to access their counselors and their MPs, having that dialogue so that they know what problems are there and that they could fix it. Um, so, and I mean, these are in my mind, I'm seeing basic things like roads in your neighborhood,
Hmm.
and you're like, I'm sure my counselor lives somewhere down the road. How do they not know that this road needs fixing?
Right.
But obviously, there's a communication breakdown somewhere, either they are living there, you know what I mean? Or they're not telling their higher ups or their city corporation to fix the
Hmm.
issue. So, again, platforms like these are very important.
Yeah, and in terms of like getting youths more involved and things, and like the way they are right now, the way some of them. I mean, I know we have you'll get a spectrum with everything, right? So you must get the ones that obviously working hard, respect themselves, and you'll have the ones that just sort of, I don't know, I would call it disenchanted, if anything.
Yeah,
They're not seeing any real opportunities for themselves later in life, and that might be why they carry themselves in a certain way, because they don't have that confidence, um, and they just don't have that, like, kind of lost a bit of the hope, and that is why I think that is more on us than them. We
definitely.
should be trying to lift them up as much as we could. So that's what I try to do. That's try to lift up the people younger than us, so that when they get to our level, they could lift up the people that would be below them.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
because if they are being held back now, as soon as after they fight up so hard and they get where they have to get, and they're 30 or 40 years old, and then somebody below now trying to fight up, they're not gonna help them up. They're gonna say, "Well, hey, I had to fight. You should have to fight too,"
Yeah,
and hold you
yeah,
down.
I agree. Yeah, and we should celebrate, we should reward good behavior. We should reward merit. Those who are working hard so that they too become examples, to the youth of their generation to want to achieve that. So I was going to say we should mash down badness, but I don't know if we should put that much energy in focusing on the bad instead of putting it on the good. So I agree with what you say, and I hope that again, like this voice becomes a bigger voice and inspires others, and it trickles a movement, because that is the kind of example we need. That it have young people just doing it. They're not just falling into whatever the status quo is,
Mm-hmm.
but they want to see change, and that's what we should all want. Again, Trinidad is too small of a place. It's too little bit of us. 1.8 million people. That's not even Brooklyn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, come on. And if all of us was progressive, if all of us had discipline, tolerance, and production, how amazing we could be. We could be enjoying our life like the Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like some more progressive, um,
Well, the
like,
Japanese without the long working hours.
well, but they work. I mean, you have to work. And I guess that's how you build a society, but they enjoy doing it too, right?
Yeah, you
So,
have to work, but they actually have some studies now trying to find out what is the optimal work week, and
right.
they had studies that showed if you work 2 hours overtime, you get less work done than if you work 2 hours less for the day. So a 6 hour day is more productive than a 10 hour day.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously that wouldn't work for all industries, because like construction where things time based,
Yeah.
that wouldn't work.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that, and there are a lot of industries like that things could change a little bit, where you could work from home a day. You could
Yeah.
do outsource, like not outsource, but outdoor work. Be what do you call it, out of office.
Mhm.
I think that that model should kind of be dismantled as well, even though you want to have communal, but it should be on a loose setting. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like why
So,
everybody have to show up in Port of Spain for 8 o'clock in the morning
right?
to sit down and do work on a computer that they could email you at the end of the day if they were staying home.
Exactly. And then do they even start at 8 o'clock? In Trinidad, people don't start work until
No,
nine
after
thirty,
yeah,
10.
after
You
yeah,
know?
because after you spend 2 hours in traffic getting there, by the time you reach to work, you're tired. You
And
just spend 2 hours sitting down
you need
driving.
coffee, you
Yeah,
need a snack,
yeah, you
you
need to
know?
catch yourself, cool off.
Yeah, it's true. So, all those things is amazing. I love this talk because it leads to so many ideas. And the more that we talk about things, that's when you get this pool of ideas.
Yeah, and you realize that most of this, they're not revolutionary. They're just common sense.
Right,
It's like we doing a lot of the things we do just don't make sense, and nobody coming out and saying, "Hey, we're not making sense of this." But when you talk to each other, everybody realize that these things not making sense, like driving to town every day to do work you can email in the afternoon. Like everybody know that don't make sense. Everybody talking about it, but nobody really coming out and saying it in a public forum.
right.
So it's like the idea is there, but how do we uh like
Get it
get yeah
action.
get the ideas action?
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to look
Well, we
at.
need to form groups, we need to come together collectively. Find your tribe, build
Mm.
it,
Find a mansion.
find your mansion. Um, yeah, I mean, as you say that, I would say definitely have a spiritual foundation, because I think that that is where, I mean, I how do non-God believing people have morality? Do you know? I don't really know, but
Um, there are ways, because if you look at Confucius, right? Um, if you look at the golden rule,
do
do
unto
unto others as
others.
you'd have them do unto you,
Right.
right?
But that's a
That
biblical reference, eh?
right, but Confucius existed 500
He
years
brought that
BC.
up?
Well, he said it 500 years before the Bible existed.
Okay.
So,
My bad.
um, no, and then when you look at it, that rule, even though it's a biblical reference,
Yeah.
it is completely independent of any reference to any deity or higher power.
Right.
So that rule itself is purely that is an atheistic rule, because it is just purely in this
Right. A
plane,
linear,
right?
yeah.
And from there, I think you could derive
Morality.
yeah, a lot of morality. So from there, you'll get, well, do no harm, but then from that, it could just as easily derive do as least harm as possible.
Right.
You know, like you ever heard the train trolley question in
Mm-mm.
philosophy? As if you have a trolley heading down a track and it heading towards a track that have five people tied to it, you're going to run them over, or you could switch it and switch tracks to run over one person.
Right.
What do you do? Will you choose to kill that one person? And it's like, so it's well, a lot of people have different interpretations for it. They want to
Right.
know who the one person is. If that one person sleep with their wife, then yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But how does that work out? Like, if you do, the most people would choose the one, right? Instead of sacrificing five.
yeah. Most people would, but it gives rise to
The morality.
yeah. It's like some people might decide to choose none and ask if it's their responsibility in the first place.
Right.
You know, and then some people might say, um,
So
if
yeah, who tied them to the track in the first place?
yeah,
What's this about?
yeah. So everybody will have their own interpretation for it, but there are ways to derive morality. I think well, if you look at it this way, so whatever religion you are, you disbelieve only one less God than somebody that doesn't believe in any gods, right?
Mm,
A lot of these religions seem to have been formed independently.
yeah.
So they must have something unifying, which cannot be anything in that one religion, right? So it has to be something purely humanistic that defines us. Maybe it's just from our experience in life, that we see things happen to us and we just don't want those things to happen to us, and we're able
Right.
to empathize. So I guess the answer would be empathy. Through empathy, you could derive morality
That what we're
without
talking
God or
about.
religion. Yeah.
Right. So I agree. And if we all lived, if that was the rule, yeah. I mean, and that you give me a real great idea there, because then that should be the intention.
Mhm.
So
It just promotes empathy. That
yeah,
should transcend
exactly.
all racial and religious
Right. I
divides.
love that. Yeah, because and I hear you. And in terms of a strategy as a cannabis activist, I hear you. And people have been telling me that as well in regards to the cancer patients and children.
Mhm.
That how can you fight that if somebody needs this, they shouldn't have access to it, right? And obviously, and you've seen Charlotte's Web. You know about Charlotte.
That was the epileptic seizures.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that is one well-known example of CBD medicine
Yeah.
curing,
I think that was the
helping
one
with it.
that really kicked it off in a
Yeah,
big way.
yeah, because Dr. Sanjay Gupta had interviewed her family, and that
Mhm.
became part of his documentary Weed.
Mhm.
Um, so and it's even local mothers. I mean, there have been short TV series about cannabis, and I think there was one where a mother herself was like making ganja tea for her child, and they were
Mhm.
interviewing her and stuff, and they were asking her, well, why would you do this if you know it's illegal? And so I agree, and I mean, I'm gonna mark that to myself, as a person. I think empathy definitely, even in our relations with our families, our children, even all of that was part of the New York experience. How do we deal with our youth?
Mhm.
And I think the youth now in this time and need more empathy than any other time in terms of what they are dealing with. Um, but they have a lot of resources, and Trinidad has one of the ways we're blessed as well as we have a lot of governmental organizations and classes and educational programs that are free, funded by our tax dollars. So I was telling you earlier about what
Mhm.
YTEP taught me. There is MIC, metal industry something.
Mm.
They do free courses, full time and short term. And then every April there's community development, which I also teach soaps and candle making for the last 2 years. And I encourage everybody every year try and do at least one course. It's 1 day a week for 3 hours. So
And
with
is it after work or is it
it's
during work?
different times, so you have to watch the time schedule. But
Mm.
it was developed for people who are unemployed and stay-at-home moms. That was the intention 30 years ago when it started community development. But it's open to everyone, and there's some courses that are afternoon 4 to 7, and things like that. So I mean, as I said, with empathy, I think that's what we need for the youth and to help guide them, and help promote positivity where badness becomes naturally something you go against because it's not trending and it's not.
Yeah, and even not just against it, but something that starts to become even non-existent
Yeah,
because you have no reason to turn to it. Your attention is elsewhere. You have everything else you need, so you have no reason to even consider
right.
whatever could be, considered badness.
Yeah. Yeah, they just, they need to know something different and alternative because that's right now, that's what they see, and it's in our music. It's in our government, it's in schools. Um, I think everywhere you turn right now, and again, coming back to the empathy point, um, we need more of that. And, you know,
I
um,
forget who it was, but somebody said, it's impossible to be an enemy with someone once you've learned their story.
right.
And that is something I think could be applicable like 99% of the time. That a lot of the criminals behind bars right now, ask yourself, well, where did they grow up? I mean, the majority of people behind bars come from like poorer homes where they
Yeah,
had to struggle and stuff.
right,
So obviously they had a lot of struggles they had to go through in their lives that that I didn't have to go to. And I
right.
wondering, well, how could those struggles have shaped them? Because I probably can't even fathom what they went through. And it seems like all this just being ignored and people looking at them and like holding them to the same standard that they'll hold somebody like me to.
Exactly.
And I will say, no, I should be held to a higher standard because I've had more to work with. I grew up in a loving home. Uh, we weren't rich, but we always had a roof over our head.
Right.
I didn't have to worry where the next meal was coming from. I know that's not always the case with a lot of people.
Yeah. Right here in Trinidad and
Yeah,
Tobago.
yeah, that's what school breakfast was started for because they had some children. The school lunch was the only meal they were getting for the day.
Yeah.
And I think that's empathy is definitely what we need, and to find a way to, if we have something, try to use everything you have to uplift the people around you,
Yeah.
and get them to be in a position where they could now help themselves.
I agree. I wish I had that book right next to me, but there's a book, The Wise Mind of Haile Selassie the First. It's a small book. And he has a lot of his quotes from his speeches, and one of it talks about is the responsibility of the educated few, to lead the uneducated majority, you
Mhm.
know. And there's also one about leadership and holding yourself to that higher standard, as you mentioned. So, as you said, like people who've been blessed with a better set of cards, because that's what it is kind of when you think about life, and how do you get the cards you're dealt. But
Mhm.
those who have more opportunity to make a way, a path, to have a vision that will be beneficial to everyone. And I mean, I hope that's my life. I know that that's part of my life's purpose because I'm really that's part of who I am. I'm passionate about ensuring that we all have access to the same opportunities. How we go about that, I haven't figured that out 100%, maybe not even 50, but
Mhm.
cannabis is a start. At least just to be an advocate at first, and then as you grow in influence, using that influence to ensure that other people come on board and they do their part. Because it's definitely not a one-man show. Everything in life is a collective of different energy. People who support you, the community that uplift you, the God that holds you firm, in
So
my
let me
way.
ask you a question. As a cannabis activist, you ever get people hitting you the argument? well, Trinidad have big issues. Why do focus on that? Why focusing on weed of all things?
Not really.
Really?
For me,
Because
not
I
really. I
hear
mean,
that
they,
sometimes. Well, not for me, but like I hear that argument
yeah, on the,
basically about anything. Like that argument about cannabis, that argument about that mantra protest they had for the girl that couldn't get into the nightclub for
right,
free.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean, I guess when that's who you are, because I mean, I don't know if Womantra got the same way Stay Calm and myself as a Rasta woman, um, I think it is very much aligned with my cause. Same
mm-hmm,
way I think Stephanie and Womantra and those women are very aligned with their cause, you know.
mm-hmm,
So I don't know if they got a lot of pushback in terms of why that issue. But with me, I think people overstand that one is a big part of my liberty now. Not just as a Rasta, but even as a cannapreneur.
mm-hmm.
Um, which is
Learning
like
some
a,
new words today.
yeah,
Yeah,
a
cannabis
cannabis entrepreneur.
entrepreneur. I
Yes, a
like it.
cannapreneur. You know,
Not to be confused with a can opener, which
exactly. No, exactly. A cannapreneur. That's so funny.
it's like a French sentence. Hey, would you like your cannabis?
I'm gonna meme that. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
too funny.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think when people see me now, they're like, okay, that's her advocacy, you know. Um, but it's not the only thing I advocate for, and I think maybe that's the balance as well. People know me as a cultural activist,
Mhm.
or advocate. I mean, maybe activist is a strong word, right? So advocate in that sense. Activist for cannabis, yes, I'm willing to even be locked up. I mean,
Yeah.
I stand at the front lines in terms of where we should be, what equity, equal rights and justice in cannabis looks like, especially for my community of
Mhm.
Rastafari. But as a culture advocate, I mean, it just means being the best Trini you could be,
Yeah. So
right?
it'll go activist, then advocate, and what do you call the people that support it,
Supporters.
but only like they only want to send memes on Facebook and they don't want
Yeah.
to get up off their couch? Like
Supporters.
supporters. Okay.
Online
Okay.
supporters. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm an online supporter for a lot of causes.
Yeah. Loving it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love. Sending love.
Yeah.
You know. Um
Thoughts and prayers.
which I'm sure helps somewhere along the way. But no, we need to, yeah, we need them to faith without works is dead.
Mm.
So we need them to do the work too. And for Rastafari, any Rastas watching this, we need unity. We need the voice of Rastafari to be stronger, to make sure that we get what is due to us.
Mm.
And why I say due to us for those who may not know or don't consider it, I mean, it is hard, as Prophet Benjamin has sung, to be the usual suspect,
Mm.
So when you talk about roadblocks and police stopping people for cannabis, if you're a Rasta, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get pulled over. You know
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
that's like a bike again pulled over for insurance.
Right?
Yeah, I
So,
used to have a bike literally every road stop. I stopped even waiting for them to pull me over. I just used to pull over and switch off my bike and pull out my insurance to them. I was
right,
like, I
true.
know you're always gonna heal me down. Don't study it. So I
Okay.
guess I kind of understand
Yeah.
where you're coming from in terms of the frequency of it, but obviously, stop for insurance not gonna be as I guess bad as being stopped for weed in terms of
Well,
how they're gonna treat you.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. The difference in treatment, definitely. But oh gosh, I feel like that's our next talk we stumble on, because the
Mhm.
police, you know what I mean? How people feel about the police, and um, that whole shitstem needing to change. That's a shitstem.
Yeah,
Because as we were talking about leadership, definitely the law enforcers should be held at the highest
definitely,
accountability,
definitely.
Um, and that's what we need to see, your beloved Gary Griffith.
Mhm.
He needs to work on that, in terms
Yeah,
of pulling up his
it looks
voice.
like he working because when he did the he wants to do the polygraph test down Cedrus, and I think all the officers just refused it.
True.
Yeah, they refused it and they changed out all the officers from the Cedrus police station.
Okay.
Right, but since we're on the topic of police, one thing I will say is that now I've had many interactions with police just like normal roadblocks, or I had a time I get robbed and I had to call police or
Way.
whatever. But all of my interactions with police, funny enough, have been, I would say I was treated well. They were respectful, they were knowledgeable. Sometimes I had my wife with me, they were respectful as well. And I honestly believe that the majority of police officers are good people. They got into it maybe because it's a stable job, maybe to make a difference, maybe to make the country a better place, maybe a mix of all three. But they're human, and I'm sure they are acutely aware that they have some bad elements among them,
Yeah.
and they need to look out for themselves. So they might just, not want to snitch because they're afraid of what kind of backlash you might get from the people around them, so they stay silent.
Yeah.
So whereas, people might say all the police bad in Trinidad, I honestly think is a minority, but that the minority holds the majority of power.
Yes. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's why I try to tell people, don't come down too hard on the police. Chances are if you come across a police officer, they're gonna be one of the good ones. Yes, you have the asshole ones, but the majority of them good, and at least give them the benefits of the doubt in that first interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have had good interactions. I have brethren who are police, so I don't, as you say, I don't have
But then they
the
have,
worst things.
yeah,
But
then they will,
as you
you
ended
would be
yours,
treated differently than me just because your looks compared to my looks as well, which
exactly.
can't be ignored either.
Right. And things like that. I mean, and what I wanted to say, how you ended what you were just saying, is that it all comes back to influence or power. And that sadly, a lot of times is because you have a corrupt head that lends to, and I don't mean the head, I just mean leaders.
Right.
I mean, even as we talk about the license in office being corrupt, when you hear, obviously, the man on the top or a man in on the top knows what's going on and he's getting a kickback, right? So, and my whole thing is that we need to reach a point in Trinidad where these things are shunned, where the morality, the empathy overpowers the need for greed. If not, we are only going downhill, you know. But I do not think that this is our natural way. As Trinis, I think this has become part of us due to more westernization and Americanization and being introduced to um, mass commercialization and, the influence of, America with all foreign brands and what capitalism has done. I think capitalism needs to be checked always. And I think that what governments need to advocate, especially our government, with these, we are in crises as well in terms of our food production and things that we import versus things we produce. It's that you should always put your internal economy first. So I think that we need to be rewarding businesses, companies, manufacturers who are producing things that we don't have to import.
Yeah, and you see, this is something I hope that this is an issue I hope they tackle with the bill for legalization. Because what you
Right.
don't want to have happening is that, okay, we legalize it, and then tomorrow you have five big multinational companies
Right.
that have the resources to set up these massive farms and undercut any small man that wants to get into it. And then these companies, you allow them to be incorporated offshore, so they don't have to pay any taxes to us.
Right.
And all our revenue that we're supposed to get from this market now just going out of our pockets.
Yeah.
And because those companies paid gave whatever politician a kickback to get this rider included in the bill.
Right.
Like, I just don't want to see that happening.
Yeah. Well, and that's
And I am very, with the way things going recently, like, I'm afraid
well,
we
you'll
might
have
get
to
something
take this
similar to that.
podcast live, like holding a mic, because God forbid we will be in front of Parliament the next day. Should such a thing be allowed? I mean, it would be a travesty. 3 weeks from now, God forbid. Hopefully it will be in that timing. But I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, we just need to be um militant about our wants and needs, because it would be detrimental to the Trinbagonian populace to not be benefiting from this new industry. A lot of different organizations and groups were invited in. or
Mm-hmm.
asked to send a position paper. I don't know which ones exactly. I know All Mansions was asked, and it was mentioned to me that other organizations as well was asked, were asked. So, it would, God forbid, let's just leave it like that. I think there is enough tension, there is enough issues the country dealing with, and legalization of cannabis would be a big one. We could all let out a sigh of relief should it be done properly.
Yeah,
So
I
that's what
hope
we
so.
await.
And I hope that no, well, as a Rastafari, you guys would have like more skin in the game, so to speak. But this is a good opportunity for, I guess, the rest of the community to support you guys,
Yeah.
because I think that religion is a mystery to most people that do have,
Way of life.
yeah, a mystery, a way of life, that to people that do have friends or family that follow that. Because
Yeah.
again, it's not really taught that much, and you don't have a lot of you don't have a lot of rastas that in the media, and you guys are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like not in your face.
Right.
So it's not like the Jehovah Witness will go around and they'll stop and talk to you, and that's how you'll know about Jehovah Witness, because they're out there talking to you and trying to convince you
Well,
about
let
what
me
they're
ask you
doing.
a question. When you think about a Rasta, what are three words that come to mind?
Relaxed, easygoing could count as one. Yeah, just like relaxed, easygoing, chill. Like, I guess synonyms of that. You
That,
know,
that was one word?
that was, I think, the three words would all be synonyms of that.
Okay.
Basically, uh, what is a word for not really being attached to possessions?
Hum.
Non-materialistic.
Right.
So I guess chill, non-materialistic. Third word, I don't know, tolerant. Because I have never seen like a true Rasta person have a problem with anybody else because of their
Humble.
race or religion. Right, they're humble
Right.
would be a good word.
Right. So, I mean, again, come in biblical context. Um, followers of Christ, even though we say Haile Selassie the first as a name, as a person, as a image of a Christ that we could look at and say, this man has lived his way,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and all of those things that one should be humble and grounded and non materialistic, you know. So it's something, I mean, it's kind of a departure from westernized thinking where spirituality is part of your life versus an Eastern way of philosophy where spirituality is life
Hmm.
and then everything comes out of that, you know. So if I had to say it, I would say it like that Rastafari is life in terms of a spirituality in a way that we're not chained to this world and we're not part of the status quo.
Yeah, I think something I find common in Eastern philosophies, like they seem to realize that our consciousness, was it plural for consciousness? Consciousnesses, conscious I, our consciousnesses
Right.
are not. Geez, so much words are looking for that I can't find. I should walk with a
That is
thesaurus next time. Yeah, so much of our consciousnesses are not like unique and separate from one another. Like we're
right.
all connected in some way, shape, or form, not just on the human level, but like entire animalistic level,
Yeah.
a plant level, like the entire earth in terms of all consciousness. Because even if you want to believe in evolution, which I believe in, right?
Yeah.
Because I follow science and stuff, you'd still have like we'd still all come from some one form. So we're still all connected in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And then at the same time, even though we connected, and even though this connection has started from the first spark of life and will exist until the last living being from earth is dead, each one of our experiences of it is very temporary. It will
Mm-hmm.
just exist for a moment. And I think a lot of the Eastern philosophies seem to build a lot on these facts, and that's why they don't focus so much on what you could personally get at this one point in time for yourself, because
Right.
they don't see themselves as so separate from everybody else around them. And I think that is a problem. And that's probably why those religions are more empathetic as well and more tolerant, because they see, well, okay,
Oh,
so you're a different religion, you're from a different country, you're a different race, whatever, but we still the same. We,
one.
yeah,
Yeah, one. I am because we are, right?
yeah, Ubuntu. See,
Ubuntu.
again, same
Yeah,
concept. I
yeah.
think in Hinduism they call it moksha.
Okay, I have heard that word.
Yeah, so it's like a similar, maybe not the same thing, but still very similar
Right.
concept of unity and consciousness. So it's cool that all these different religions have sort of similar concept that they seem to have come to.
Yes. Yeah, and no matter how they try to divide us, under whatever lines, may it be socioeconomic, race, even religion, we have to remember that we are one. And as Trinis, we suppose that Trinbagonians, and we don't live on Tobago, who we love so much.
Hmm.
But as Trinbagonians, every creed and race find an equal place. And those two are our words, right? Are we like that right now? Unfortunately, no. So coming again to the oneness, I think Trinidad has a mandate, especially that being our words, to
Mm.
return to our original intention, where every creed and race can have an equal place. And how do we strategize for equality is what we need to work on immediately and for the immediate future, especially for 2020 moving forward. And that is what I want to hear. That's the kind of leadership Trinidad needs,
Yeah, and I think on an individual level, everybody just needs to just do your part.
for sure.
Treat everybody equally. And if you have more than the person next to you, well, find a way to uplift the person next to you so they could, I guess, have more opportunities as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going for about almost 2 hours now.
Wow.
I think oh yeah, hour and a half. So thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Me too.
We could probably, I guess, when the bill comes out, we could probably have it and read through it or something and really pick it apart and see what's up with that
That would be
and see
great.
if we got everything that
Yeah.
you guys wanted.
And I could bring on someone else, another
Yeah.
cannabis activist, to share the mic too,
Mm.
right? So you could get different viewpoints.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Empress Q, for
You're
coming on the
welcome.
podcast.
Thank you, Jaleel.
And
Let's talk about it,
yeah.
TNT.
All right, and goodbye, everybody. See you all next time.
Bless.